Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside Movies Galore for another thrilling episode with the Inside Movies Galore crew. Hello, everyone. Here in the room, we have Kitty Cadaver.
Hi.
And then we have Red Raven.
Hi.
Then, of course, we have Dustin. And Brandon.
Hello.
And, of course, Kabuki Jake.
Hola.
So, hello everyone. Tonight we are doing my favorite film of all time. If those who do not know me, this is my favorite film. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one of you, and then I'll get to what I have to say. So I'm going to start with Red Raven. If you'd like to tell me your first impressions of this film. Was this a film that
Do we want to cover a synopsis first of the film? And
That's a good idea.
Who directed it and what year it's from?
The film is directed by the Chiodo brothers, set of three. So ultimately, we have Stephen, Charles, and
I forget the third one. I forget the other guy too, actually.
but
Stephen, Charles, and damn it,
I thought just Steven was the director.
Correct. Stephen Chiodo was the director, and
it's
it was
Chiodo
by Chiodo Productions. In,
I could have sworn it was pronounced Chiodo.
1988. So we have a couple that goes up to a lover's lane, kind of a place.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a farmer and his dog who are also in the same vicinity. And they both kind of see something that looks like a comet that kind of flies overhead. And it turns out to be a dark carnival that has some creatures come out of it and start taking over the town. So, that being
like
said,
it's kind of like the Blob, except instead of a comet, it's a spaceship. And turns out aliens are real. They just happen to look like clowns and have the same sensibilities and want to eat people.
So, starting on that basis, why don't we go over to Red Raven and see what was this your first time watch?
No, I've seen this a few times before, and I really like it. It's a great movie. Just everything about it is just, I mean, it's cheesy, but that's what I like about it, and just everything about it is good.
Okay. Going over to Brandon for a moment. When was was this your first?
Actually, I saw it first not long after it came out on TV, and it was running. And I remember that because the whole cotton candy cocoon thing freaked me out. That was my first exposure to it, was him sticking the straw in that thing. And and that's the memory I always have of the film. The first time I saw it the full time was probably in the early 2000s. And I've seen it many times since then.
That was a scary looking straw, I'll grant you that.
Going over to Katie. Why don't you tell me your first impressions of this film? And was this a first time watch?
This was not a first time watch. This is a rewatch for me. This movie actually inspired me to do a burlesque routine entitled Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So definitely one that I'm familiar with. And I guess my overall impressions of the film are just how much fun it is. You know, it's not a movie that takes itself very seriously, which I like. You know, I do like movies like that. And, you know, just the kind of the 80s cheesiness sort of mixed with it. It kind of almost feels like it's supposed to be almost like a 50s sci-fi, like cheesy thing mixed with 80s, you know, imagery and stuff. So it's just a ton of fun. Like it's a movie that is not, the plot's not very thick, but it's just a fun film with a lot of great gags. So I enjoy it a lot.
Going over to Kabuki Jake, was this a first time watch for you?
I don't think so. I honestly can't say with any certainty that I saw it before, but I think Brandon showed it to me at one point. I think so. I did not have any real memory of it, but I've seen it now.
And what were your impressions of it?
It is a fun movie. It's unbelievably cheesy. Definitely lives up to its reputation as a bad film, but it also lives up to its reputation as a fun film, I think. So, yeah.
Alrighty. And going over to Dustin, was this a first time watch for you?
Oh, certainly not. So I'd seen this movie a long time ago with my friend Andrew, who we used to have on the show before he got a different job. Weird digression, sorry guys. But anyway, Andrew kind of introduced me to this movie, and I had heard of it. I had heard of it a lot earlier. Like some kid on the bus in elementary school that I used to sit with, he was describing it to me, and I didn't know like what to make of it. Like he was getting like details wrong and stuff, and it sounded like a really gross, disgusting movie the way he described it. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is pretty great. So I've seen it probably a dozen or so times since. Never kind of fun Andrew story with that. His wife doesn't like clowns, and he'll sometimes like pick on her by like talking about this movie. And he'll do it to the point where she's like, just stop talking about it. Stop talking about what? And then he'll like get up close to her. It's like the circus scene. But anyway, I always love that story. But yeah, it's a pretty great movie. It's got a lot of creativity behind it and some pretty unique monsters. So there's very little not to like.
And I myself saw this film when I was 5 years old on TV, I believe. And being subjected to this movie, it scared the bejesus out of me.
It did.
Especially the part where the one fatter clown had the Chief Mooney as a puppet.
There were some genuinely creepy moments.
He said my name, and that just creeped me out, and I quickly turned it off. And then I couldn't figure out what the hell the name of the film was for many years, until suddenly I figured it out, and it's Killer Klowns from Outer Space. So, and not too recently, Arrow came out with a nice little Blu-ray set of it. So I think they did a fantastic job. For once, I'm actually a fan of a Blu-ray. That they actually did really good at cleaning it up and making it look like it's like a brand new film transfer, you know. So, let's talk about some of the. Do we want to talk about the plot first?
We can. I think it's a pretty easy one. It's kind of the title says it all.
It's a straightforward like invasion movie.
Which is why I think it reminds me of a cheesy like 50s sci-fi kind of thing.
I think that was what they were what they said that they were kind of going for.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah.
I'd read that they did actively reference, the Blob and other stuff like that. And you can definitely see that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely was pulling from those in a way, just almost a comedic jab at a lot of those.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, I also think that this was a point in time where they were heavily trying to make sure that films did not advertise about certain beer companies. So I think that that the fact that the young kid that was walking across the street in the very beginning with cans of beer that said beer on it.
I never
Why
noticed
was there like a rule about that, or they couldn't?
Well, yeah, there was kind of an advertising rule because that's how many companies actually based getting some of their money off of because many films have actually placed beer advertisements or things of any advertisement in films. I mean, to this day, there are rules about what
Right, you have to get permission first from the.
correct. Just like in Transformers, they are advertising Snap-on tools.
Plug in, was it product placement?
Product placement.
That's why you notice on a lot of reality shows they don't. They're not allowed to wear like name brand clothing or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. They have to make it on their own steam in a sense, so that they're not. But every so often, you get that full-on company name blasted in your face. That it's from this place,
Mm-hmm.
and people just go out and buy it. So, but ultimately, what do we think of? What about we think about our Chief Mooney character?
He did a great job at being a jerk. Very angry asshole.
So, for the people who don't know,
Killer clowns from outer space, huh?
okay, so I feel like we've completely lost track of where we're supposed to be in this, like plot-wise. But Chief Mooney is kind of an old. Chief Mooney is is he actually the chief? I thought he was just an officer. Officer Mooney is this older cop who's kind of an antagonist to one of our main characters, who's a younger cop. And Officer Mooney is kind of the no nonsense sort of like stiff character. Like you can tell he's also like definitely kind of a dick from some of like the stuff he says. It's like, you college punks, like you know the type.
He's totally cynical. Like he's ready. He should be retiring soon. Think he's had enough.
Like I remember Andrew being like, he is a bad cop. Like one of the clowns shows up later on. Like he's been ignoring all the 911 calls about the clowns attacking people because he thinks it's some big prank that they're trying to pull on him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're not gonna fool me." And one of the clowns shows up, and he thinks it's somebody in a costume. And at first he kind of plays along a little. It's like, "Oh, what have we here?" And then they'll like throw a pie at him or something, and he's like, "You just made a big mistake."
Squirts him in the face with a flower.
Yeah, that was it. And he's saying stuff like, "By the morning, you're going to be begging for mercy." It's like, shit.
The reason why I started talking about some of the characters is the plot is relatively simple.
The plot is fairly thin. So our main character couple goes to check out the meteorite, and they stumble into the clown's spaceship. They see a few of the clown's like weapons and stuff lying around, and then they're chased out of the ship by the clowns. They go to the cops to tell them about the ship. The ship is gone, and it's off somewhere, and then the clowns start doing a sweep of the town, like collecting bodies for them to feed on.
Spoiler.
So that's the majority of the movie. And then there's like a big showdown like in the spaceship at their spaceship where the clowns are like fought and destroyed. But the movie is really just kind of like set piece to set piece. So that's about all the story we necessarily get. But boy, are they good set pieces.
I agree.
What did you think of the colors in the set design?
The set design is probably one of my favorite aspects of the entire film. Like it's totally 80s, it's totally fun, and it was completely inspirational for me in creating my burlesque number. Just all of the elements, the fun house, the cars, everything. That must be where the budget went, because it's all done really well, in my
They
opinion.
even
And
had
the
a Big
character,
Top burger.
yeah, everything about the sets were really pretty great. I enjoyed all of that.
Well, one of the things that I noticed before we go forward about some of the different characters here is um, when the couple ends up stumbling onto the spaceship, and the first elevator ride they take to the inner lookings of the ship. That specific scene kind of reminded me of the moment in time when you see in Forbidden Planet the inside workings of the Krell underworld, in a
They
sense.
may have been going. They may have been going for that, yeah, with like their
Yeah.
kind of retro sensibilities thing.
Yeah, because there's a moment in Forbidden Planet, especially in the remastered transfer where they made it more colorful, where they're looking down down into the spaceship, but in here, you see this like nucleus looking like lightning thing that seems to make the ship run. So I thought the inner workings of the ship was kind of cool looking from that angle. So
Yeah, they tried to have everything that the clowns used be circus themed in some way, and then I think that was the one thing that they were like, okay, we'll have something to show that they are really technologically advanced, like just this really like bizarre abstract thing for like their power core / engine room or whatever that was that they stumbled into.
I thought the part where they turned a balloon dog into a hunting dog.
Oh yeah, so
Was
when our two main characters escape from the ship, the clowns are like pursuing them. They have these popcorn guns. They're like shooting popcorn at them. Turns out it's not popcorn, but we'll get to that at some point.
You don't know how bad I wanted to make a popcorn gun for my burlesque routine, but it was a little more adventurous than I needed to get.
You know what was really surprising was in one of the interviews on the DVD, they were talking about how somebody was designing the gun for them, and it was like this incredibly elaborate, like multi-$1,000 prop that this person was like developing, and they mentioned it to somebody else that they were having a problem with that, and they were like, I can do that for $150, and they went with the other guy, and that's what's in the movie. So you could probably pull it off. We would just need to find like the schematics or something. But anyway, so our main characters are escaping from the big top spaceship, and one of the clowns stops, blows up a long balloon, folds it into a balloon dog, which comes to life and starts like sniffing their trail. It's like, what
That
the
was
hell
funny.
what the hell am I watching? It was amazing.
Well, and going on to the character of Mike Tobacco, what do we think about his character?
Mike is the guy who was with his girl. Mike is the main character who was with his girlfriend when they saw the meteorite. And he's kind of I want to say generic hero?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not-
what I was gonna say. And generic is the best description.
Yeah.
And kind of I don't want to say it, but at the end of the movie, like, what's his name, Dave? He's like all up on Debbie, and Mike's just like, yeah, cool, all right, we survived, and dude, totally getting on my lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a triple love affair, kind of.
There's a love triangle between our three main characters.
Yeah, because he's still got feelings for her. She's got no feelings for him, and yet she still wants him to protect her.
Well, when right after they rescue her and she is like scared, doesn't she like hold on to Dave instead of Mike? And Mike's like, "Aw."
Pretty much.
Or-
yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to remember. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell Mike and Dave apart if Dave wasn't wearing a police uniform.
Yeah.
Well, one's a blonde and one's a brunette. That's about it.
So
Oh,
what,
well, I guess that's part of it.
what did we think about the Terenzi brothers?
They were
Yeah.
they were awesome. The Terenzi brothers are these two friends of Mike's. They're basically just these kind of almost Three Stooges like characters who like they run an ice cream truck, and they're kind of lovable idiots. I think is the trope that describes them.
They're definitely the most interesting human characters.
When I saw that movie and I saw the ice cream truck, my first thought was to the Cheech and Chong movie, Nice Dreams.
Nailed it.
That would have been excellent to have them in that particular ice cream truck and that sort of that sort of movie.
Yeah. Chong in this one? Is that?
Yeah, they're. What was that?
Hmm?
What were you saying?
Who?
I thought I was cutting somebody off. Anyway, their introduction is they drive their ice cream truck out to Makeout Point,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna try to sell ice cream to people making out, and they're like shouting at them like over like the little loudspeaker. Like the top of their ice cream truck is a clown, and so out of the clown's mouth, they're shouting out like some kind of really suggestive rhyme about ice cream.
Oh yes.
Supply
We'll
the
give
stick.
you the stick. You give it a lick, and it'll tickle you all the way down.
And I was watching the movie with my stepsister a couple years ago, and right at that part, she was just kind of like, "How about no?"
I've decided to use that as my tagline whenever I perform this number. I'm like, wait, how have I not been using that already?
So ultimately, we were starting to talk about the popcorn earlier. What did we think about the animation of the popcorn and what it eventually turned into?
You mean the scene where the girl was in the bathroom and
Yeah, because evidently when she had come back from the spaceship, she had actually brought back a bunch of the popcorn, which ended up being something that grew into something like a Venus flytrap.
The popcorn is actually clown spores, and they turn into like these little, almost chestburster like things that eventually become adult clowns.
that was probably my favorite scene when they like attacked her in the bathroom, and that was probably my favorite scene in the movie.
It was definitely inventive.
I like how that they always start life as popcorn.
What about the part where they eventually figured, that it was actually Dave, the police officer, who figured out how to actually kill these clowns?
He gets kind of lucky. So the clowns seem impervious to everything, and he's just firing his gun at it. Nothing's working. He just happens to hit it in the nose. Its nose pops, and the clown disintegrates.
Well, it doesn't.
It turns into like a sparkly diamond tornado burst of confetti.
Kaleidoscope bomb.
Got me in the nose.
So ultimately, what did we? Whose clown was everybody's favorite?
I
So
don't think I had a favorite.
So for each set piece, they used basically like a different clown, and they all had kind of like code names that are never mentioned in the movie. So it's probably easier to go by scene. So, which scene was your favorite clown in? Might be a better way to identify them.
My scene is the bust your chops off scene.
Knock your block off.
Yeah, bust your block off.
Good God, get it right.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That's like the little short, tiny clown with the green hair.
Yep.
I always like the shadow animals.
Did I honk your
The shadow puppets. That's one of my favorites too. I do that in my burlesque routine. That's how I start it. is with those shadow puppets.
I thought they
quite
did really
fun.
good with the clown costumes. I mean, just everything about them was really cool. You know, their oversized bodies, and you know the way the heads were done. Everything was just really unique, I thought.
They're really
Super
weird
detailed.
proportions.
I
Like,
mean, the fact that you can think about when the little girl is looking out the window and that clown is motioning her to come here, you have to think about, what if this actually happened? And it's very probably fairly easy for a little girl to believe a guy dressed up in a friendly clown suit to come outside.
yeah, there are a handful of genuinely frightening clown moments in here, and that's one of
Well, that
them.
was
So,
like a Pogo the Clown, John Wayne Gacy, like, ugh.
it's like one of the clowns. So for the people who haven't seen the scene, so one of the clowns is standing outside of like their version of McDonald's, and he's playing like peekaboo with a little girl inside, and he's kind of like beckoning her to come outside, come here. And like she starts to leave the building to go to him, and behind him he's got like this big mallet, and it's like, oh shit, is he gonna kill that kid on camera? And it's the only time the music occasionally takes like a serious tone instead of like the weird upbeat carnival thing that it does.
Mhm.
And this scene has serious music, and it's like, ugh. It's
Another one of
frightening.
my favorite moments is when one of the fat clowns comes to the door with a Valentine. And she opens the door and she's like, "Oh, Herb, did you get that for me?"
Blam!
Or what about the scene where the one was in the pharmacy and he was squirting whipped cream around, and the owner's like, what the hell? She's just like staring at him.
Yeah.
See, how do you pick a favorite scene? There's so many good ones.
Candyman.
I think the shadow puppet scene, like you guys mentioned before, is one of the ones that's a strong contender. So a clown is doing like a shadow puppet show for a bunch of people, and doing things with the shadows that you couldn't possibly do with hands. Like, that's the joke. Like, at one point it's like Washington crossing the Delaware, and there are like 6 or 7 people in a boat. And it turns out the shadow is its like own entity. It turns into like a dinosaur and like kills these people. Like, it like swallows them, shrinks them, and then he puts them into a bag. And then the knock your block off scene is like one of the short clowns is near this like pulls up on like a circus tricycle to this biker gang, and they're like making fun of his bike, and they're like, "Oh, can I ride it?" The clown's like, "No," and the clown's like, and they like smash his bike, and then the clown jumps away and jumps back in with like boxing gloves, like, "Come on!" And the guy
Just knocks his head off.
and the biker's like, "What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?" Wham!
Well,
Like,
of course, predictable, knocking his block off.
Or I think I might have my favorite. So there's a scene where this guy's driving down the road, and he looks over, and there's a clown driving what looks to be like an invisible like vehicle of some kind. Like, he just seems to be like floating in air.
Clown shoes.
Yeah, and he gets like the clown like runs this guy off the road, and he dies in an accident. However, what I like about that the most is the initial seed of this whole thing. Like, this all came from my idea that the Chiodo brothers had. They were talking to each other. It's like, okay, so you're driving alone in the country in the middle of the night. You look to your right. If you look to your left, what's the scariest thing you could see? And their answer was a clown in a car a clown driving next to you, staring back at you. And I thought about it, and I was like, oh my god.
That's like the scene that I always remember vividly from way back in the day in the Batman animated series, where the guy turns left and Joker's driving next to him. It's like, no. That's like, what would be the scariest possible thing in Gotham? Yeah.
I'm just remembering that whole thing now. It's like the Joker cuts him off, and he cuts the Joker off, and he's like, "You he's like, "You fucking moron," or like whatever, and he's just like shouting at the Joker. Like before he realizes that it's the Joker, like the window rolls down and he sees it's the Joker, and the Joker's just like waving at him like "Hi," and he's like, "Oh my god!" And then he just like tries to be normal. He looks in his rearview mirror. The Joker is following him, and like he can see the Joker like waving at him in the mirror.
Yeah.
And the whole time the guy's like, "No, no!" He follows him like all the way home. Like Joker gets out of the car and he's just like, "Hey," like smiling. And it's like, oh, this man is dead. It goes a different place, but oh, it's so good.
So, what do we think about the carnival once at the end, where it leads to where the carnival spaceship is actually?
So they the clowns hide their spaceship at this like waterfront carnival, and it just looks like part of the displays. A little odd how it seems to have like a tunnel connecting the funhouse. A little odd how the funhouse seems to have a tunnel connecting it to the innards of the ship. But yeah, we'll forgive some stuff here and there.
What's odd is the guard didn't notice the ship arriving, but he does notice a clown car pull up and a bunch of clowns get out.
Yeah, and he like tries to stop them. It's like the park is closed. And he like holds up his hand in like the stop thing. Like that's gonna work.
I think pies. And one of my favorite lines in the movie was, "What are you boys gonna do with all those pies?"
That's Andrew's favorite scene, or at least the one he used to talk about a lot. So the clowns like start piling out of the clown car, and he's like, "The park is closed. Go home."
I think,
and it cuts back, and the clowns all have pies. And he's like, "What are you gonna do with those pies, boys?" And they're like acid pies, and so they pie him to death.
Also, another scene that inspired a moment in my burlesque number. If you haven't seen it, it is on my YouTube page, and there is a pie scene as part of it.
I think one of the moments that I find that is always ultimately creepy is the moment where Dave, not only when Dave comes across Officer Mooney being puppeteered, but also when he walks into the jail and he sees all kinds of clown-shaped footprints all over the ceiling, the floor, and then when he comes to the jail, when that arm just drops right in front of him, that scared the crap out of me. The first moment that I saw that, and that's what kind of led up to that scene that scared the fuck out of me, you know. And I mean, at first you get that arm drop, and he's like, "Whoa!" And then it goes into the other room, and it's eerie how he's got his face all dolled up, and he says, "Hey, Dave, we're only going to kill you."
Don't worry, Dave.
And then all of a sudden you hear a sucking sound as you see the clown's hand come out, and I'm like, okay, I better turn this shit off.
So a couple clarifications on that. The clown's main weapon is this like ray gun that essentially cocoons people into like cotton candy, because it turns out like the clowns drink blood from the cotton candy bags, and they can like in the jail, like there are a couple of like inmates like stuck to the ceiling like with the cotton candy thing, and it's really gross. And what the clown ended up doing to Officer Mooney was turning him into an actual dummy. Like that's a line earlier that's foreshadowing. It's like, "You're not gonna make a dummy out of me with you and your college flunkies, Dave." And then the clown is like ventriloquist dummying him.
And I kind of like that part too. The making him into the dummy.
Well, and everyone remembers probably when they were young and had a birthday party, and you had those blow things where they just kind of rolled out. Well, where this clown actually had the rollout thing, and it turned into a hand that grabbed his throat. I thought that was unique too.
Like that's kind of one of the first moments where Mooney is like, "Wait a minute," because like he takes out his the clown walks into the cell in that scene I described earlier, and he pulls out his nightstick and he just like whacks the clown in the back of the head really hard. Now, remind you,
Not only that,
he
but
thinks that the
models-
kid in a he thinks that a college kid in a costume, and he like just pulls out his nightstick and beats on him, and the clown's head like flips completely around, and Mooney kind of takes a step back, like, wait.
It's just fun moments all around. I mean, yeah, it has some dark humor at times, but it is a relatively fun movie, and it makes me laugh at certain parts over and over every time I see it. And that's what I mean. Yeah, it scared me at the very beginning when I first, found it. But later, as I grew up, it just grew on me as more of a comically, funny film. But I still remember my first instance watching it. So,
Well, when I first saw Alligator, I was scared beyond belief at that scene in the pool. And I wasn't really able to watch it without being like repulsed until like 20 some years later. So I can understand.
Amazing, yeah.
I can
Did
understand.
anyone think the cotton candy looked like insulation?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's what they used, but it totally did.
but
That would be itchy.
I almost wanted to see what it would taste like.
When he put
I wonder if it would
that
taste like
long
stuff.
straw inside and just like sucked, that was crazy.
Yeah,
That scared me as a kid.
the clowns drink the human blood from the cotton candy sacks with like crazy straws, and that actually ties into another joke.
I wonder if Crazy Straws also got kind of big after this film too, because of how, because
Oh,
of
nothing got big after this film. Like this was always kind of like a cult classic. Like it was fondly beloved, and I think it did like okay, but it didn't exactly blow up. So I don't know if you can really make that claim. It's one of those titles that, people who saw it like younger like remember it fondly, and it has like a following, but it's almost been like rediscovered in like the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, isn't there a rumor that there's going to be a second one, or?
Well,
There's been rumors for a long time. Like there's a talk
just
of a TV
recently
series.
on October 22nd on Sci-Fi Channel. Sci-Fi has suggested that they are trying to be in talks with the Chiodo brothers about creating a series with the brothers based on the original concept. Whether or not that'll actually happen, I don't know. So.
Well, they've been trying that off and on for years. They were like, "Oh yeah, we want to do a sequel," or "Oh yeah, we want to do a TV series." And it's one of those things where they talk about it like every year or every other year, and then nothing happens. So I'll believe it when I see it. But they are definitely interested.
Oh yeah.
About where that leaves off.
The Chiodo brothers are also somewhat behind the Large Marge scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That was
Really?
a creepy scene.
Yeah, they are the guys behind the animation of that scene.
Because they didn't really do much besides this movie, right? Or
they also did.
They did the Critters movies.
They did the first.
They did effects.
They did the first Critters movie. That's it.
I was pretty sure. I thought they did effects for all of the Critters movies because they're on the upcoming Shout Blu-ray. Each movie has a commentary track with them on it, or at least I'm pretty sure each one does. I'm not sure who's on the track for Part 4, but I remember they're on the tracks for the first two for sure, and I think the third one. So I'm fairly certain the Chiodo brothers are more like effects people than like directors per se. So they work on stuff, but they don't really do anything on their own.
They were the critter designer and the supervisor behind the critters in Critters, the design and supervision behind Critters 2. So yeah, I can see why they would be behind the critters.
Behind the series.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
and
thought that they were just the first critters, but you're right. So,
but yeah, it's kind of fun. They actually got their start doing like little home movies, like little stop motion home movies. And what's cool, one of the cool things about the new Arrow Killer Klowns release is that it comes with, I think, 5, 6 of their little short movies that they made as kids, and they're really basic. But you could tell that these were kids having a really good time, and for like 10 and 12-year-olds making stop motion movies, they're actually pretty decent.
oh yeah. They were also behind Team America World Police in 2004. So
I can see it.
Which and if anyone remembers the puppetry of the Mr. Potato Head show.
The what?
There was a Mr. Potato Head show from that ran for a year between 1998 and 1999.
Really?
Evidently, and they were behind the puppetry of the show. So,
Don't think I ever saw that one.
I remember bits and pieces of it. It was on, I think, a little bit before the Muppet Show, somewhat.
Before the Muppet Show in 1998?
Well, they had reruns of the Muppet Show.
In 1998?
Well, they had reruns. Of course, they had them in 1998. Remember, the Muppets were out in 1970. So,
in my defense, I only knew about the Muppets from Muppet Babies until like 2010.
What? Come on.
Oh, okay. I saw Muppets Take Manhattan in like 1995, and I remembered them from movies, and I remembered them from Muppet Babies. Like, I will expand it to that. I did not know the Muppet Show was a thing until much later in my life.
So they also were involved with the creature effects in Ernest Scared Stupid. That's cool.
Don't they?
Yeah,
I think I heard they used one of the masks.
Yeah,
One of the clown masks.
They used some of the clown gear in that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember them talking about that in the extras.
The Ernest movies, those were great.
Yeah.
We should do one.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
But I can see that with Ernst Scared Stupid, yeah.
I just remember the Family Guy joke. I'm not good with tough decisions. Cuts to the video store. He's holding 2 tapes. Tape 1, Ernest goes to the beach. Tape 2, Ernest doesn't go to the beach. The PA, we will be closing in 2 minutes.
It's probably been 20 years since I've seen an Ernest movie. We should watch one.
They played this movie on Sci-Fi. They played this movie on Sci-Fi Channel, but they ultimately were behind King Cobra, which was a movie that played on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Is that one with Pat Morita?
So,
Mr. Miyagi.
I remember.
Mr. Miyagi fights a snake and kind of dies horribly.
Evidently, they worked on some of Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, as one of the creature fabricators too. Mm-hmm. Also, do you remember Good Burger?
Oh yeah, the Nickelodeon thing.
I saw it at a theater.
They were the puppeteers behind Good Burger.
That needed puppeteers?
Evidently. So they've been in part of some of the
They're everywhere.
Things that I thought that they have been.
Yep.
So
kind of getting back to Killer Klowns though. Yep. So let's see. One of the cooler set pieces that they have too is like they're trying to convince the Terenzi brothers that the clowns are like a real thing and a threat. And they're like, yeah, right. There aren't any killer clowns. Like they say some obvious setup for like a clown reveal joke, and then they turn the corner and there are like dozens of clowns like roaming the streets with guns, just like, shooting people into cotton candy. Like they have like this big like Dr. Seuss vacuum suck thing to like scoop up the bodies.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly grim and nasty. And they're like, "Oh, okay, clowns are real." And
yeah, like every set piece, every scene just gets a little bit more ridiculous. And once you think you've seen it all, they come up with some, big giant like vacuum sucker machine, and then it just keeps getting more off the wall. I love it.
and
to me, every time I see this film, it's like I see something different every time, and it's like one of those ones where it's like I put it in, and it's just enjoyable for me. So that's why it's my my top number one favorite.
there is always something to notice with this movie.
I like the music, especially the song they play at the end.
Oh yeah, they play it in the very beginning too. The killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
That's actually music put out by the Dickies.
yeah.
And also the song I danced to in my burlesque number. If you didn't already guess that.
Now they had a little thing on the Blu-ray where they like talk to a couple of the members of the Dickies, and it's kind of fun to hear them sort of reminisce about those old days. It's like, yeah, well, we were one of the first punk. Can we say we were one of the first punk bands? And the other guy like kind of thinks about it. He's like, early punk. We were early punk. And yeah, it was a punk band that just got commissioned to do this song for the Killer Klowns movie, and they had a great time doing it. And it's always been like one of their most popular things.
Well, and
so they had nothing but good stuff to say.
The soundtrack was done by a guy by the name of John Massari. So, and he ultimately ended up doing some music behind the Ray Bradbury Chronicles, and worked with some of Walt Disney stuff, and so on and so forth. So,
yeah, it has this really cool like carnival quality to it. So I'm pretty sure that was intentional too. I think there was an interview with him that I don't remember much from. But a lot of the music in this, like, is meant to be like circusy and light, so that you really notice like the few moments where it becomes more serious.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just love I love the music that's called the Killer Klowns from Outer Space March, and that's what they call it. They actually did a remix, which wasn't too bad of it. So,
where the three clowns are like marching toward, and they play that
towards the town.
Yeah, and they play that song.
Yeah, all the clowns leave the spaceship and like lurch towards town. Fun thing about that scene is, did anybody else notice how the camera seems to kind of like tilt up a little bit, like as more clowns show up?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
They did not have enough like clown shoes for everybody in the costumes at once. So a lot of those guys are in tennis shoes, and so it tilts up so that you can't see their feet.
One thing to go back to the music briefly, I will say that we've talked about soundtracks that one could listen to and enjoy on their own. And I actually thought this whole thing had as a whole, had a great soundtrack that could be listened to on its own and enjoyed.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's quite unique, and it does work in that sense. I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been like a vinyl release for this, or for all I know, there probably is, and I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the music that the composer behind the soundtrack to this evidently did another film from 1988 that I know somewhat relatively well. I don't know if anyone else does, but it's called The Wizard of Speed and Time. And he did the synthesizers and the orchestra in that. Also behind I, Madman. And Lady in White. So, just interesting.
So back to like the movie though. So eventually, our third main character, the girlfriend Debbie, is kidnapped by the clowns and taken back to their ship. And so the Terenzi brothers, Mike and Dave, like go to rescue her, and they find the spaceship at the carnival and enter the fun house, and then it's like a prolonged, almost kind of like chase through the fun house. Although, well, I suppose they have like a long, quiet moment where they're sneaking into the ship, and it's kind of weird that they don't seem to really run into any trouble. Like they infiltrate the ship pretty easily. And they have a long talk about, oh, what do you think the cons are here for? And they throw out like a bunch of different like sci-fi theories. And the Terenzi I keep getting their name wrong. Son of a bitch. The Terenzi brothers, one of them says it's like maybe they're just flying through the galaxy and wanted a bite to eat. And they end up being right. No lofty goals, solutions to anything. And so they rescue Debbie, and then there's another chase through the fun house. And you get to see just all of this weird geography. Like, I think Katie made the point earlier about, like, each thing just gets crazier and crazier, and they kind of go for it with that fun house. Like, they're sliding down poles that have, like, creatures on them. Like, they're going through, like, doors and hallways.
Like the inside of the spaceship, it's
like an Escher painting.
Yeah. I mean, it was just weird all the way around. When the farmer puts his hands on the thing to try to fight against it, he gets zapped.
Where's my dog? Touches the live wire.
Pooh Bear, what happened to my Pooh Bear? But
that's maybe the only part of the movie I cringe at, because it's like, ugh, that name. I hate that name. Yeah, anybody notice the clowns keep all of their cocoon victims in like this big storage room? Did anybody notice there was one cocoon?
And they're like hung up.
Yeah, there was one cocoon that was a lot smaller. That's the dog. And anyway, so the movie ends with like a big confrontation between the leader of the clowns and our heroes. Like, the Terenzi brothers kind of disappear when they're going through the funhouse.
Yeah, that
they put that girl in the balloon too.
Yeah, when the clowns capture Debbie, they put her in a balloon, which is, I'm not exactly I can't exactly remember why they do it. Like, they don't kill some people, they just kidnap them with like these like balloon things. And so they're running from the killer clowns after freeing Debbie from the balloon, and they eventually ended up in a room. It's like a big arena, and they're surrounded by all the clowns, and the clowns are coming at them with like various weapons, and it's like, oh shit!
Got some kind of big top stage or whatnot.
Yeah. They've got like bats with nails in them, and just all kinds of like weird shit.
And out drops this big gigantic.
Well, that doesn't quite happen yet. So the Terenzi brothers, in their ice cream truck, crash through the wall. And because their ice cream truck has that big clown head on it, they're like, I am JoJo, the great clown. Let them go. And the clowns are like, what? Okay. And it kind of works. That's the best part. It kind of works.
Almost did.
And then their leader, officially known as Clownzilla, which is this 14 or so foot tall giant clown, like drops from the sky and like wrecks the crap out of their truck. Like, he punches the cockpit right off it.
This also scared the crap out of me, because I think I remember it coming on again, and I was able to watch until that scene. And when that clown jumped down, it scared me, because there's always scenes that give you a jump scare. And once you get past the ones that make you okay, then there's another one that just kind of drops out of nowhere.
Like, it's even got like it even has kind of like a harbinger sort of foreshadowing moment, because like it makes a sound before you see it, and all the other clowns in the room leave. It's like, what's happening now? And they're eventually able to. Everybody but Dave holds Clownzilla off while the others escape. And he's able to pop Clownzilla's nose, and the explosion from Clownzilla is big enough to destroy the ship. And it looks like Dave dies, but he's survived in a clown car. And the Ferenzi brothers survived the destruction of their ice cream truck by hiding in the trunk of the same clown car. So everybody's okay, kind of. Even though, like, if you look at the background of like the cotton candy room, they show it in the beginning when Mike and Debbie enter the ship, and it's a really big room and it's empty. And then at the end, it's just totally full. So they kill hundreds of people in this movie.
Yeah.
Even though you only see like maybe like 20 or so of them throughout the whole film.
We see a few dozen kills. It's pretty graphic.
Oh yeah. I mean, even though it's got a lot of cheesiness, there was a lot of brutal kills. You know.
Like, it's kind of mean-spirited humor, I think. It's hard to explain, really.
It's like when that guy showed up with, the clown showed up with the pizzas, and the lady's like, "Oh, a clown!"
The clown jumps out of the pizza box and kills her.
Yeah.
Or, that was another, when they show up to, like, get Debbie, one of Andrew's other favorite moments where, like, she goes to the door because she's hearing Mike's voice. She opens the door, it's coming out of a clown. She's like, "Ah!" And she runs to the window to jump out the window. And she looks down, and there are a bunch of clowns dressed like firemen with a trampoline, like, ready to catch her.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew likes that a lot. Man, there's just so much to like in this movie. Like, it's kind of a tough one to cover.
So it's really hard to pick a favorite clown, pick a favorite scene. You know, they're all good in their own way.
My favorite clown was probably the little guy. I can't knock.
I think he's just called Shorty.
Yeah, I liked him because, you know, they picked on him, and he was basically able to conquer his enemies. You know, it was like, okay, let's pick on his tricycle. Boom. Okay, let's get the fuck out of here.
Like, you don't feel bad when that guy dies. You don't necessarily feel bad when Mooney dies either. Like, there are human villains in this, but for the most part, it's all pretty grim.
All right.
There is that funny moment with when Mooney's getting all the calls. It's like, "Oh yeah, clown, yeah, right," click. And then the guy from the pharmacy calls him. It's like, "Yeah, Kurt, I think we have a problem." And he's trying to report the clowns that are tearing up his pharmacy. And Officer Mooney's like, "Aw, not you too, Steve," or whatever that guy's name was. It kind of plays into the small town. You know, people know know each other's names.
The look on that guy's face in the pharmacy, he's just like, "What the heck?" Like, just sitting there staring like, you know, he had never seen anything like it.
The clown's trash is shot.
And he's calling Officer Mooney. He's like, "I think we have a problem."
Yeah, like he's hesitant.
He's like not sure what to say. It's like, and Mooney's like disappointed. "Oh, they got to you too? I know you. Why are you pranking me?"
The whole town's in on it, eh?
I love how he maintains that it's fake till the bitter end.
Oh yeah.
But he's not that kind of likable character. He's that person that's always in denial.
There's always one of those who will never believe a darn thing.
It would be nice if a sequel to this actually did materialize this time. I mean, they've been talking about it for practically 30 years, but...
Well, I would love if anything came from this, because there is so much they could adapt into something modern with what they have, you know? I mean, there's so much they could work with, even though I know they did a lot in this film, you know?
Yeah, and so hopefully people have a better idea of why we had trouble giving a plot breakdown before, because as you can tell, the movie just goes from, you know, scene to scene. Like, they have a continuity and they have an order, but aside from the stuff with our main characters, it's mostly just like a collection of moments, you know?
That's an easy breakdown for a movie.
And
So-
furthermore, it's not only a collection of moments, but of like classic clown gags that they sort of make larger than life.
Exactly.
So ultimately, everyone agrees that they enjoyed this film, correct?
Oh hell yeah!
Alrighty. Is there anything
Fun
else?
movie.
Is there anything else that anyone wants to add before we
Tuck it in.
Well,
No.
I just wanted to mention, I think I read somewhere that this had like a $1.8 million budget, but made like 42 million worldwide or something, and then it's rated in the 80s on Rotten Tomatoes, and I would have never thought that. And I guess I never thought about what kind of budget this movie had, but considering that it only didn't even have $2 million budget and it made, 42 million worldwide is pretty impressive.
I think so. I mean, it is one that when it came out, it made mediocre audiences entertained, but it was considered a bad movie, at the time. So I think it's something that grew on people, and by word of mouth, it became something more, and people enjoyed it for the entertainment value, the cheesiness. And I think all around, this is just a good, fun film. Yeah, there are stupid moments, but you got to have that in a I would say that this is a horror comedy.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say
They
that.
say
are really
sci-fi
stupid
horror comedy.
I would say so. It definitely does have that scientific element to it with the spaceship.
Because apparently all the clowns are supposed to be aliens.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's like aliens are real. They just happen to look like clowns.
Well, not only that, but they also had creatures that they shot out at people. So it's like they had more than just them.
They had
along
technology.
with,
I think for something to be sci-fi, I think something is sci-fi as long as it involves aliens. Like if there are aliens involved, you can throw sci-fi in there, like aliens and/or technology.
Well, and I think people were always afraid of that one day when aliens would come down and destroy the Earth in some way, shape, or form, and nobody would survive.
It's one of those movies that contributed to the fear of clowns, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, coulrophobia is a real fear. I mean, I know that there are many people afraid of clowns, and there are many people who don't like clowns.
Yeah, I don't like clowns. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily afraid. I just don't favor them.
Well, my wife could not have that movie playing in the house.
Really?
Yeah, she just can't do any clown movies.
I subjected my fiance to the film last night, even though she said it's. Well, when I received the film from Arrow a couple of months ago, it was relatively recent when we saw it, so she wasn't exactly looking forward to watching it again. But she also does not like clowns, so.
It's
Still
kind of-
it?
What?
No, I thought she was there when we watched it.
Why is your audio so quiet? Like I can barely understand you.
Be quiet.
Kabuki Jake.
Huh.
I can hear him.
Oh, I have a lot of trouble understanding him. Like he sounds really muffled.
Oh, just
He was talking about the movie It.
But
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
wife did watch It with me, but this is a movie that's all about clowns all throughout the movie.
But it's a
all
fun film. It's a fun film. It's fun of clowns in a sense. It does really because it turns it into something horrifying.
yeah.
I guess I'm a fighter for this film. But in any case, if anyone doesn't have anything else to add,
I did want to say that I do believe that the best way to have been introduced to this is as a child, because I don't really feel, unless you have a severe clown phobia, that this movie can really scare most adult populations, especially the desensitized adult populations we have today.
Yeah, there was nothing really that scary in it.
But I do think that when you see it as a child, you learn to appreciate the movie more as an adult when you get into it. And it's one of those, I think, that is a good one to see when you're young, and then to watch again.
I think a lot of horror films are good to see when you're younger than they want the audiences to see. It's that point in time where you want to sneak into the theater when you're like 6 years old to see that horrifying film that your friends at school told you that they just went and saw because my daddy went and saw it. You know?
Yeah, I was never allowed to watch any kind of horror movies growing up. The only thing that scared the crap out of me was Jaws as a kid. I didn't see any real horror until I was older.
I was afraid of the bathtub for quite a while after I saw Jaws 2, not even the first Jaws.
I had to sneak a lot of horror films. I even had to sneak Home Alone. So I had to I mean, my mom just did not like the movie, so she didn't want me to see it, you know?
Well, mine didn't either, but I had this whole weird... My mom and my dad could not have been more opposite in sensibilities. So mom would make it difficult to see horror movies, and I actually missed most of them until I was much older. Whereas dad rented Alien for me when I was 3. He would go to rental stores and buy their old movies that they were rotating out. And I remember in one trip, he bought me Scamper the Penguin, which is this Russian animated penguin movie. It's a very sappy kids movie, which has shocking violence in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's Russian, you know. And then Predator 2 was in that same trip. So I saw animated children's movie followed by Predator 2 uncut.
Although,
when I was 4.
If my mom had not been the way she was, I probably would not have gotten into some of the animations that I have seen. I got into Unico from one of the many taped VHS sessions my mom would do just to keep us children, my sister and I, sane, I guess, during the school season. So ultimately, I ended up watching many weird animations, and ultimately later found many of them to own. So.
Oh, I mean, that's the thing with movies when we're children. Some of the times, I know that I've spent a lot of time looking up some of the ones that I remember seeing on HBO when I was young, and then as an adult, I'm looking for them, and I have only images and memories to go by. I was actually surprised that one of the movies that scared me so much as a child doesn't scare me, of course, as an adult, which was Cellar Dweller, which had a similar effect as the Killer Klowns. And I had lucked upon it by getting it in that Empire set that came in there. So it's great to see stuff like that and then learn as an adult.
Oh yeah. Was there any other movies that might have scared you as a kid that no longer does not affect you now?
Well, I already said Alligator.
Well, I knew you, Katie.
Oh God, every horror movie I saw as a kid scared the shit out of me. Nightmare on Elm Street was the first real horror movie that I saw that terrified me, and now I take pictures with Freddy Krueger, but as a kid, scared the crap out of me. I was afraid of horror movies for quite a long time growing up, probably till at least 14 years old was when I probably started to chill out about it and start watching some things. But my mom was a big Stephen King fan, so I was exposed to Stephen King stuff like it was no big deal because they would show the mini series, like It and stuff like that. They show those on TV, and my mom had this thing where if it was on TV, we were allowed to watch it, even if it was probably a little too scary for us. So I remember like also some Alfred Hitchcock movies like The Birds. I was shown that very young,
God,
at a very young
I
age.
went to Universal Studios and they showed a segment of the birds in 3D. You could actually see the birds sitting on your shoulder and everybody else's shoulder, and that fucking scared the shit out of me. I was like 3 or 4 years old when I went into the Alfred Hitchcock Museum.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that stuff as a kid, I just remember like thinking if they showed it on TV, like that it could really happen. Like I didn't, as a very young child, I didn't understand the whole like special effects thing, which I think is partially why that's one of the main things I'm intrigued by now. Or, what got me actually more into horror was how did they do it? How do they make this happen?
Mhm.
And it's what I translate, into my performances as well. I try to create things where, people are wondering, well, how does that work? How did she make that happen? That's the most intriguing part because that's what I think really scares people.
Well, and I think the thing that makes me really like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, this is like almost the perfect horror film to me because it's got comedy, it's got horror, it's got elements of sci-fi. I mean, it's got darkness. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything that combines everything that I grew up with. And it's kind of like that pinpoint time traveling moment where I can see a little bit of the 80s, but see a little bit of the 50s, and still enjoy it every time. And it's pivotal. To me, it's a pivotal film to watch, and maybe I put more importance on this film than need be, but I think everybody should see it.
Well, I think it's definitely a top like cult classic film that probably most people should see because most people can see it. Like it's one of those films that kids can watch it, adults can watch it. It's not exclusive to, that rated R crowd necessarily. I've showed it to my daughter and she's 11. It's one of those like starter horror movies that you can start kids on. So it's a nice family horror movie. Like if you're looking for a horror movie to watch with your kids on Halloween, Killer Clowns is a great one.
I would have said Friday the 13th Part 6, but that works too.
Yeah, that's my favorite Friday the 13th one. But yeah, I don't think my 11-year-old is ready for it.
I did kind of steal that from like Joe Lynch because on the commentary for Part 6 in the Blu-rays on the Blu-ray set, like they do a fan commentary and they're like, yeah, Part 6 is the one that maybe you let your kids watch. And I thought about it and it's like, yeah, okay.
Alrighty. So if no one has anything else to say, then we will close out the session.
Yeah, I think this movie's on Hulu, by the way, if you guys want to check it out.
It is. Yep, that's how I watched it. They have a whole section that's called Halloween.
It's actually good because normally normal person tastes on stuff like that like suck. So
yeah, they had Pumpkinhead and Pumpkinhead 2 on there.
Oh well, goddamn!
Huh.
I have Hulu. I should have. Whatever. I just use it for Daria anyway.
Alrighty, so starting over here with Brandon, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, I run Septum Sen versus the World, and I'm also part of a YouTube channel called That Nerd Couple. Both of them cover media in a way, whereas the other one is more of a broad one. Septum Sen versus the World is very much based off of the physical media realm. We have a lot going on this Halloween season. We have a lot of videos planned for next week. including a top 15 movies and media that had given us frights, as well as people get to actually see my rather large Amityville film collection. It is 19 films wide so far, and
Of
still
just
looking for more.
Amityville?
There
Just
are that
Amityville.
many.
Yep. So it's a fun run through. I'm still working on a couple of those things, but by next week it should all be up and running. So people should check it out. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. Going over to Kabuki Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Jake. I also frequently guest on Septum Sin versus the World, and like you said, we put in a lot of work getting videos ready for the upcoming couple of weeks. And I'm actually going to get a few opportunities, theoretically, going to get some time to do some proper editing. They often don't get the opportunity to do, so I'm going to have some solo videos coming up soon that will be actually edited to my preference, which is a rarity. So that'll be a lot of fun. And well, that's pretty much it for right now. I mean, just doing plenty
And
of
you're a
doing.
returning guest often on Inside Movies Galore. So
That too.
going over to Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
Sure thing. I'm Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm a body positive horror artist and alternative model. You can find me on Patreon and Instagram at 3RDEYE0PEN. I'm also the makeup artist for the horror punk band Ratbat Spider. You can listen to them at ratbatspider.bandcamp.com. You can also see them this Friday in Racine at McAuliffe's Pub with the Biscaynes and the Red Flags. It's the Halloween Bash down there in Racine, so check them out there. And I am a dead girl for Degger's Dark Coffin Classics horror TV show. You can check out episodes on vimeo.com/ddcc. And Deadger and the Dead Girls were at the Wheaton Haunted Flea Market this past weekend. I was not there, but I'm sure Red Raven can tell you all about how much fun that was. Let's see. I'm also a performer and producer for Grindhouse Tees Burlesque Productions. You can find us on Facebook.com/Grindhouse Tees. And a couple of us will be performing this Saturday, October 27th at the Up and Under on Brady Street for the Halloween Freak Show. Myself and Penelope Peach will be performing that show with Honey on the Biscuit. So come down and check us out on Brady Street this Saturday. And I am a Tromat with Trauma Entertainment. You can get all the best trauma entertainment at trauma.com. And I'm an editor for Movies Galore of Milwaukee. And we are still plugging through our October movies. And it sounds like next week we're going to try to do a double feature of the original 1978 Halloween and also the new Halloween.
Halloween 78 and Halloween 2018.
Go ahead, tell us all about it, Dustin.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's fine.
Well, I feel bad now. Yeah, so we got to go, at least me and Katie got to go see the new Halloween, and I thought it was legit. I was really happy with it, even though a lot of the purists are kind of split.
I honestly haven't heard any negative, real negative reviews at all. But maybe I'm not paying attention.
Some people are kind of pissed.
Really?
It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's like the first weekend. It's like the first weekend. I think the box office broke some records, but then after people had seen it, then you started hearing the real pissed off people.
Well, I can't imagine what they'd be pissed about.
Fanboy dumb.
Some people like it. Some people prefer what they did in H2O.
Yeah, well, those people are stupid.
I don't know. One of the ones who really hates it is he's in one of the horror collector groups I'm in, and is kind of like the Halloween guy. So he has probably the most complete collection of different releases of Halloween out of like anybody. So he basically
Michael.
Mike Romano. Yeah, he basically just collects different copies of Halloween from around the world, and he is really into Halloween. He doesn't like a lot of the sequels, and he really hates the Rob Zombie one. But he is. I kind of trust his opinion a lot on the Halloween. So it's sort of like, really, you didn't like it?
I know why people would dislike the new one, but at the same time, it's just sometimes fun to sit back and enjoy the film when it's enjoyable.
Well, it comes from
That's how I
someone
feel.
seen any of the sequels except for a small part of the crappy Rob Zombie one. But I have seen the original. I thought the new one was a good sequel to the original.
Yeah, I got to go see it with Celeste from Dead Girl Celeste at a theater here in Milwaukee, and I wore my Michael Myers costume and had a good time. So there are some pictures of us on Facebook, like sitting in the theater, like with a mask on. They wouldn't let me wear it the whole time. So what I really wanted to do was, during the scene where Michael gets his mask back, I wanted to just put it on and leave it on. However, security wouldn't let me because I asked. But I was able to put it on briefly without getting caught and like pose for photos with people. It was a good time. And
Well, don't tell us the whole story. Save it for next week.
Good point.
Yeah.
See, you've all got stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm Dustin. I collect movies here in Milwaukee. I'm starting my own channel called The Crypt of Horrors for collecting, reviews, and just kind of whatever horror I feel like. I have an Instagram where I show off my ridiculously large collection. DHR Hunter, all one word. I might end up changing that to Crypt of Horrors as well, just to kind of keep it streamlined.
Okay.
And tomorrow, at long last, I have my interview with horror comics writer Tim Seeley. So I'm going to record that tomorrow, and I'm going to do some editing so that we have like pages from the comics we're talking about, like show up on the screen. So this was it was derailed earlier by like technical issues, but I think we finally got it figured out, and I am excited.
Awesome. Going over to Red Raven here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do? And
I'm Red Raven, and I'm from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and I book shows in the Milwaukee area. And then I'm also a dead girl at Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics. And I was not at the flea market over the weekend, but I did see photos that looked like they had a blast. They met the girl from the Sleepaway Camp movies, and
yeah, Felissa Rose.
Does Felissa Rose like live in Chicago or something? Because
she lives nearby. She does all the Chicago ones, and she does the indie ones. So I know she lives close by, but I don't know exactly where.
I bet I know somebody who knows. I don't know.
I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard to figure it out.
Because for my channel, I want to do kind of what we do here on Movies Galore. We talk about a movie, except I want to do kind of like more like streamlined one-on-one kind of things. So I'm sort of looking at different people I could maybe talk to, and I feel like I could potentially get her if I asked in the right way, like with the right timing. So, especially if our first interview goes really well.
I hope so too. I wish you luck on that. So, in any case, my name is David Strege. I run Movies Galore Milwaukee, which is a blog here on Facebook and on Twitter, as well as Instagram. Ultimately, I created Inside Movies Galore, which involves us crazy fiends as we explore many horror films and branch out into animation and other cultural aspects of film. So ultimately, we will explore strange new film worlds coming up as we finish up the Halloween season. And next week, like Katie said, we have the Halloween films. And even though I haven't seen the film, I will try to close somewhat of a blind ear to all of you fellow fiends who seem to go to movie theaters lately.
I went to the drive-in, and in my defense, I did not go to the theater. I saw it at the drive-in.
Well, I've been paying more attention to the indie film crowd to pay attention to the mainstream.
I don't think I've seen a movie in the theater before this. I can't even tell you when the last time I saw a new movie was.
The last time I saw a new movie was the Jurassic Park film.
Last time I saw something in a theater was Alien Covenant.
I much more prefer physical media and my own home theater system. So
I was kind of hoping it would end like 10 minutes earlier because I started to have to go to the bathroom like as it ended. So kind of like that's why I prefer physical media too, just because I can do stuff like that.
I'm really sad that I'm not going to be there next week to join y'all on it. It was an enjoyable film, and we got to actually see it in a nice, a really nice theater, where it's a dinner theater, which is really cool. So it was a good experience, but Jacob got to see that in that theater, so he'd be able to share it.
Did Jake go? I don't think Jake said anything.
Yeah, I did.
He went with us. It was me, my wife, Jacob, and another friend of ours.
Awesome. Yeah, I just haven't gotten around to joining in on the hype of the new Halloween. I know that there's been a lot of hype because of it, but and I enjoyed the Halloween franchise to a point, but I wasn't too big surfing in on the whole Halloween hype as of yet.
The soundtrack is lit. Like, get the soundtrack if you can.
I'm at least gonna check out the new theme song, if anything, before the physical release.
That's what everybody who saw it, even if they didn't like the movie, they all love the soundtrack. Like every last one of them loves the soundtrack.
Well, I'm sure that's something we can definitely talk about next week. Alrighty, so everyone, say good night.
Good night.
Good night. Like, share, subscribe
To
me. Freddie laughing.